And now for an overview of voting in Oregon and election trends in Central Oregon from Deschutes County Clerk, Nancy Blankenship. Please note that Nancy's presentation is pre-recorded and she will not be available for audience questions. Nancy.
Thank you, Jamie. Oregon has a long history of vote by mail. It started in 1981 with Lynn County Clerk Dale Riley going to San Diego County and working elbow to elbow with the staff there to learn how to do vote by mail. So the first vote by mail election was that November of 1981 in Lynn County, and I believe they shared a district with one of the surrounding counties. And so that was the advent of our vote by mail. And over the next number of years, we were able to persuade the legislature to allow special districts elections to be included in vote by mail. And then in 1998, by overwhelming 2/3 vote, the citizens of Oregon voted for all vote by mail. So in the year 2000, Oregon had every election vote by mail. So a presidential, primary and general, and we were very successful at that. So vote by mail has been something that we've been doing for over 20 years, and it's been successful. We've been learning, we've been changing, we've been growing our vote by mail process every year as we go to the legislature and ask for fixes, and we make changes by adding like secrecy envelopes back in the past, and just a variety of things that we work together with the Secretary of State's office and the county clerks and the Secretary of State, presenting ideas that we can make a more unified and better experience for our voters. And so that's kind of the basics of where vote by mail came from. Oregon is the first vote by mail state, with Washington that followed second, and then Colorado. Each of us has a different flavor of vote by mail, and as an Oregon election official, we think ours is the best, of course. And so in the 3-county area, we have been seeing a tremendous growth in our population. For example, when automatic voter registration started January 1st of 2016, Deschutes County was just under 103,000. Clerk County was just under 13,000, and Jefferson County was just over 10,000. Let's fast forward to end of July 2020, compare just under 103,000 to over 144,000. That's a 40% impact or increase for Deschutes County. Clerk County was just under 13,000, and they're at about 18,500. That's a 45% increase. And Jefferson County was just over 10,000 and are now at 15,700. So that's a 53% increase in registration. So that's a huge influx over the last 4 years. A lot of that has to do with the Oregon Motor Voter. When you go into register to get a driver's license or an ID or a permit, you're automatically registered to vote. You are given 21 days to opt out of that after receiving a letter from the Secretary of State giving you that information, and also telling you that if you would like to register with one of the parties, you could do so as well. Otherwise, you'll be registered as a non-affiliated. So that all happened since in January of 2016. That was an impetus for the growth, as well as we've seen a lot of people moving to Central Oregon. Voter turnout expectations for November. Based on our historical turnout for a presidential election, and I think it's going to be on the high end this year, we're looking at anywhere from 83 to 87%. Clerk County is looking at 80 to 84%, and Jefferson County is looking at about 80% for a presidential election. Oregon has always been in the top 3 to 5 states as far as voter turnout, so we're expecting that will continue to be at the top as far as turnout as well. One of the things that has been of interest is youth voting and what the statistics are for that. So their participation in local elections is pretty dismal. So, but in a presidential election at the primary, they're about 20%. And then for a presidential general, they're about 51 to 58%. So that's good. But for a governor, it drops down for the primary to about 10%, and for the governor's race for at a general election is about 40%. And what you see in trend, and I think that trend's probably held over time, is that as people grow older, more seasoned, we become more interested in our world around us, and want to participate, see the value of participation. For those of you that are new to Central Oregon, one of the best examples I have of one vote does make a difference was in 2020 or 2010. The city of Bend had a race where there was 2 votes difference, 30,000 participation, and there was 2 votes difference. So, you know, we do have great examples locally as well as nationally and in the world of where one vote does make a difference. So it's important to encourage everyone to participate, because that one vote could make a difference either way for those candidates in that City of Bend election. And I have more recent statistics, but that's probably the most dramatic, where you have a 30,000 people participating and there's only 2 votes difference on one race. One of the things that we always see, again, related to youth and people moving to Oregon, especially Central Oregon, is inexperienced voters. It's been interesting. I've never had so many people ask to help me on an election. Over 17 and a half years I've been here, and I've probably fielded close to 60 to 70 calls, emails, in person, people wanting to help with, you know, at the polls on election day, and which we don't have. There's only 36 polling stations in Oregon, and that's the county clerk's office. But some of the things that I'd like to talk about a little bit is to overcome being an inexperienced voter. And so one of the things is Oregon does a voter pamphlet, and for every primary and general election, the Secretary of State's office produces that. And also Deschutes County does a voter's pamphlet for every election. We're only one of maybe 9 to 12 different counties in the state that produces a voter's pamphlet. So yay, Deschutes County. Thanks for funding us for that. So those are mailed out 1 week prior to when ballots go out, so you can start your education early. If you're really a go-getter, you can go online the end of the month, and our voters pamphlet will be online, as well as the Secretary of State will have their voters pamphlet on their website as well. So do your research, know what you're going to do when you get that ballot, and return it back. Ballots are going to be mailed out on Wednesday, October 14th. We're making it one small change in that all drop sites will be open on Friday after the ballots are mailed out. So that will be, all drop sites will be open on Friday, October 16th. So make sure your signature is good. If you registered to vote through Oregon Motor Voter, your signature through DMV may not be exactly what your signature is going to be like on your envelope. So if you have any thought that your signature is not going to match, fill out a new voter registration card and get that to our office before you return your ballot, so we can make sure that your ballot counts and we don't challenge it. We'll talk about challenging here a little bit later. Remember to sign your ballot. We're seeing more and more people forgetting to sign the ballot. So, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well later. Understand how to mark your ballot. So we give instructions in the voter's pamphlet, as well as some instructions on the secrecy envelope that come with your ballot on instructions. So if you do make a mistake, you can ask for a replacement ballot, or you can follow the instructions on how to correct your mistake so that your intended vote will be counted properly. Understand that, as well as how to make your corrections. Also make sure you know where you're going to return your ballot. Are you going to take it to the post office? The legislature approved prepaid postage. So if you're going to mail your ballot in Deschutes County, do not mail your ballot any later than the Tuesday before the election. If you have not mailed it by then, you need to take it to a drop site. When ballots are prepared, they are prepared to mail directly, so they don't have to go to Portland and back. But when you're returning your ballot to us, they will have to go to Portland and back. So that does take some time. So that's why we direct voters in Deschutes County to not mail any later than the Tuesday prior to the election. In Multnomah County, where the Postal Service is right down the street, that's a different story. So you'll hear different time frames in different parts of the state, and that is why. The list of drop sites are listed in your voter's pamphlet. They are also on our website. We have added one more in the city of Bend on the northeast side at the park, the Pine Nursery Park. And we have added a drive-through box out in front of our county building here. We're not going to be opening the little booth that we have had open forever. That looks like a little coffee hut. It was just too hard to do the social distancing for that. So in lieu of that, we've opened a 24/7 box in front of our building that you can drive through and not even have to get out of your car. So that's awesome. We're excited about that. And let's see, misinformation and disinformation is probably of greatest concern. And Jamie and I are going to talk a little bit about that afterwards on our Q&A. And a little bit about our security. Each county has a security plan that we submit to the Secretary of State's office. It's due by January 31st of each year. Under Oregon law, it is excluded from disclosure because it's covering our security, but we do have multiple layers of security. Some of the things I can talk about are, for example, when your ballot is mailed to you, each voter is assigned a voter ID number. Each ballot that we create and mail out or give over the counter has a unique ballot ID number. So for example, if I get my ballot and my proverbial dog eats it and I need a new ballot, then that new ballot will be assigned a unique number different from my first original ballot. So that's one of the levels of security that we have. Your signature matching is another level of security, which is important for the voter as well as the system. One example I like to share is 4 years ago, we had someone that received their ballot at their place of work where they shared with other people. And apparently this person and another person weren't getting along too well. And that person took their ballot, voted it, mailed it in, and we challenged it because the signature didn't match. And we were able to identify who the potential person was that voted the ballot, and we sent that to state elections for them to investigate for fraud. So that signature is a vital part of our security. We have built-in security in our physical surroundings. For example, it's been publicly presented that we have cameras in our locations where ballots are being processed. We have other levels of physical security that we have in our offices as well. Our system itself is as secure as it has ever been. State elections is the owner, Secretary of State, state elections is the owner of the Oregon centralized voter registration system that we all work under and through. It's a top-down system. So if you are registered in Oregon, in Deschutes County, you're an Oregon voter. And so moving from Coos County to Deschutes County is just an update. It's not having to re-register. So they have been actively engaged in securing our system, practicing phishing expeditions. So we are well prepared to avoid those as time goes along. We know that there'll probably be more push for that in the next few months. And so all that different types of training through the state elections as well as through Deschutes County, our IT program has been doing those kinds of things as well, just to protect Deschutes County. So there's a lot of different security pieces that we are working on. We do have a white page on our website that talks about security as well, if you want to do a little bit more reading about that. And what we've been doing for COVID, so for the May election, we weren't sure if we were going to have to entertain our voters coming to our counter outside or if they were going to be able to come to our counters inside. So they were able to come inside, so we didn't have to stage an outside reception for them. But we do right now, until we get glass partitions in our office, we have limited access just to our front double doors where you come in. And we also provide masks. We provide sanitation. We were having our boards located in 3 different locations, which made it really difficult. So I'm thankful that the Board of County Commissioners have agreed to allow us to house and stage the election board and observers downstairs in the 3 rooms. The board typically takes the 2 rooms downstairs where they have their public meetings, and then there's a 3rd room, and we'll be taking up those 3 spaces so that the boards can all be together as well as the observers, so that everybody can hear all the instructions and any questions, anything that might come up, that we're all there together and we can provide that same information at the same time. So those are some of the things that we've been doing to address COVID.
Great. Well, thank you, Nancy, so much for all your work to make sure we have secure elections and for the information you've provided.
Thank you.
So Nancy, how can we encourage more people to engage in civics, civic education, and voting?
I think that's a great question. It's been something that I think has kind of dwindled over time. I can remember when I was growing up, you know, getting my permit, getting my driver's license, and registering to vote were kind of the first 3 things you did as you were edging towards adulthood. And we had classes, we talked about voting and going to the polls and those kinds of things growing up. And I don't hear kids talking about that type of interaction at the family level or in school. So I think it's, you know, a change of culture is important to bring us back to those revelations that we have responsibilities that go along with the rights that we have as a community member, and to encourage people to participate, to vote, to become involved in their community. And that encompasses a lot of things outside of running for a public office or working for government. That's volunteering to plant flowers at the local park, pulling weeds, to all kinds of variety of just making your community a better place to live, and encouraging people. I think that's the most important thing. You know, your voice counts, and kind of going back to the example I gave, that, you know, the city of Bend, 30,000 voters participating, and we had 2 votes difference. You know, your voice really does make a difference. And the local level is where you live, where you participate, and where you join arms to get things done for your community. And I think if we can encourage people to vote on our local measures, our local candidates, is so important, because they really do affect your everyday life. And encouraging people to understand that dynamic is kind of the basics for community engagement in all aspects of life, not only just registering to vote, being an informed voter, marking your ballot and returning that ballot, but just to be a good citizen and to participate in making your community better.
Thank you. So Nancy, as a longtime county clerk, does anything keep you up at night as we approach the 2020 election? Are you concerned about foreign interference of our elections? What are some of the things that you're thinking about in terms of security?
I think the thing that keeps me awake at the most at night is the unknown of what can happen. I think misinformation and everyone thinking they're Walter Cronkite when they access their laptop or their keyboard is probably the most concerning thing I worry about. People just assume that they know what's true and how things work. You can, you know, go look at any article, and then all the I'm not sure what you call it, following on their social media, and everybody's putting out their opinion. And as an election official, I read that and I'm like, man, they have a clue of what really happens. And so, and that can just blow up before you even know what's going on. We've seen this with, you know, comments about the Postal Service. The Postal Service is in great shape. Oregon Post Office, we've got the same people at the head of the ship that are guiding us down this river that have been there for 20 years. And they do this little thing once a year for hundreds of years called Christmas, where they get a lot more mail than they're going to get for vote by mail. And so people just take an idea and they run with it. And so that's the scariest thing for me, as well as just not knowing what might happen. So for example, I don't know what was going on in 2010, but we had someone try and advance an idea of on Craigslist that, hey, if you come down to the county clerk's office on the Saturday before the election, you know, for $20, I'll buy your ballot, we'll vote it. And it's like, who would have thought, you know, but we were able to get that shut down in cooperation with Craigslist, and law enforcement was in our parking lot all day, double checking that nothing was going on. But it's just those kinds of things that people get a wild idea and run with it that can cause a lot of confusion for other voters. And so our biggest push is, you know, if you have a question, go to the trusted source. So who is your trusted source? Your trusted source is your county election office or your state election office. Don't listen to your neighbor who's never worked in the office. You know, the second best, you know, we do have election board workers that come in and help us process ballots to prepare them to be counted. A lot of those have years and years of experience because they've worked with us for many, many years and know some of the basics. But, you know, your neighbor, if they're not working here at the clerk's office, they don't really know what's going on. So misinformation is probably my biggest concern. And, you know, even though the, you know, another country is always poking their buttons, they're doing that all over the world for all different types of things, not just elections. And we are continuing to be diligent to make sure that all our doors are locked and the deadbolts on, so that if they do come knocking, they're not going to be able to open the door. And that's basically what the issues are as far as cybersecurity, is making sure the doors are locked and they can't open the door.
Great. Well, thanks for your work to help protect our elections.
Thank you.
Nancy, can you describe what happens to our ballot once you receive it?
Sure. So when the ballots are mailed in and we receive them, either comes through the postal service, a drop site, or from another county, we bring them into our reception room, and it goes through this machine called our sorter, which you would see in any small mail house in a large building. It just sorts mail by certain prescribed schemes. And so for our purposes, precincts are how we sort them. So we get ballots, we put them in mail trays that we use from the Postal Service. It goes through this machine and it sorts it out by precinct. During that time, it also captures the signature side of the envelope. We use that signature to compare to the signature that we have on file in the voter's record, and we compare that signature to make sure it matches. We're not looking whether it says Jim Allen Smith. We're looking at the style of how Jim Smith signs his name. Does he use a large capital J? What is the slant? Is it loopy, straight, small? You know, what is the characteristics of his signature? That's what we're looking at. And so if the ballot is a signature is a match, it moves forward and it goes to the election board to be processed. And what I mean by that is it's taken out of the envelope, flattened so that it's prepared to go through the scanner. If the voter signature doesn't match, or the voter forgot to sign their envelope, then the voters are notified. So with a no signature, we send them a postcard because it's easy to kind of flip over, and we'll hope we'll get more of their attention to come in and cure what we call cure that signature, which is to provide us a signature. And they can also do that with a card that we have if they can't come into our office. If their signature just doesn't match, we send them a letter with a voter registration card copied on the back so that they can return that signature. And so that when they return that back to us, we'll compare that to the signature on the ballot return envelope, and hopefully it'll match, and we can move that ballot forward to be counted. So that's kind of the life cycle of the ballot at the front end. We have people that are trained by a vendor from the Secretary of State's office. She worked for state police for many years, and she has her own consulting business now where she spends days looking over signatures to validate if it's a true or a fraudulent signature. So so everybody that does our signature verification goes through that training. On the election side of the board, this side of the house, they are extracting the ballots from the outer return envelope and the secrecy sleeve. If people decide to use those are optional, not required, and preparing them to go through the scanner. We've got 3 scanners that we use to scan the ballots, and it's a software that identifies what oval has been marked and what that vote is for. And so then after 8 p.m. on election night, we can pull all that together and provide our first let of results for the community.
Thank you. And what if a ballot is challenged? What's the process and how can that be cured? So if I don't do my signature, it doesn't match what I've submitted before, and it's challenged, what does that look like? How do I hear from, well, actually I'm in the neighboring county. So what information do I get and how do I respond and make sure my vote counts?
So you would receive a letter from your county clerk, and you would have until the 14th day after the date of the election to cure that signature. So that means that you sign that voter registration card that they provided to you and get it back to the clerk's office. Either you can mail it back or bring it in to the clerk's office to validate the signature matches. If you forgot to sign it, you have that same 14-day window to get that information back to the clerk's office. If you drop your ballot on election day, or you drop your ballot in Multnomah County, but it's a Deschutes County voter, that shortens that window because we will not probably get that ballot back to us until maybe Friday or the following Monday, depending on how much volume, say, Multnomah County has to distribute. Because they also, one of the things we also do is a sweep of the 4 postal distribution centers. So you can drop your ballot anywhere in the state. If it's going through the Postal Service, we will do a sweep of any ballots that we can identify. And that is done by Multnomah, Lane, Marion, and Jackson County. And then they mail those ballots to the other counties so that we can process them. So that's another good point for getting your ballot into us early. So if your signature is challenged, you have a little bit more turnaround time.
And just to confirm, I have 14 days from election day, not from when I receive a letter from my county clerk. Is that correct?
Right, the 14th day after the date of the election.
Great. Thanks again for all your help and for showing us the behind the scenes look at how how elections work and how our votes are counted.
Yes, I'd love to be able to give people tours, but with this little COVID situation we're in, it's not quite as practical as it used to be. But typically I always offer, if anyone's interested, to give them a tour and see the back end of the house.
Well, thanks again, Nancy, for all your work to make sure our votes count and for your work to help protect our elections.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.